Hello and welcome to Flop Shop. Now with extra echoes, echoes, echoes. Because I'm in an echoey room.
Welcome to the podcast where Cormac does all of the research and I just roll in, half asleep, sweaty from having worked out, and just blather on endlessly.
I'm like, Isidore, what do you say the budget was for this movie? You're like, $10? You're like, yes,
Five.
$10 billion. And I'm like, you're like, yeah, that's what I meant, $10 million. Don't look at me like that.
Obviously, I have a good conception of how much things are worth. Sometimes I feel like in Arrested Development when the grandma's like, "Oh, how much could like these bananas be?" I feel like I'm that person.
Like,
I don't
like
have a good
$9.
sense. I have no sense of the value of things sometimes, I think. If you ask me what a movie's budget is, I'm like, man, I don't know. Could I make that for $100? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm just cheap. Who knows?
And talking about inexpensive movies, today we are reviewing Isadora. Don't tell me you're gonna get to forget the movie name 2 weeks in a row.
Crap.
I'll give you a
It's
clue.
Honey Boy.
Yeah, I was holding up
How?
some. You're like, I was half expecting you to say maple syrup boy.
Maple syrup boy. I don't know how this keeps happening. I really wonder if it's just extensive sleep deprivation.
I think so. I think extensive sleep deprivation and also you have the memory of a goldfish.
I really do. Okay, before we begin, I would just like to state that today specifically, somehow from the kitchen where I grabbed my card for the bus out of my jacket pocket to put in my new jacket pocket, literally from the kitchen down the staircase to my backpack, I managed to lose my lanyard with my medical school card and my bus pass. I don't
Oh,
know where it is. No
wow.
idea where it is. Somehow within a literally 3 foot distance, it has magically vamooshed.
That is impressive how you. I presume there's just like a black hole around you that's sucking in random objects because that's the only explanation
There
I can think of.
there
You
is.
you lost your plane ticket at the airport.
Yeah, I am just really
We had to
good.
ask one of the ladies to print out a new ticket for you
I
because you couldn't get on
accidentally
the
threw
plane
it in the
otherwise.
trash. I have a very bad habit that if I'm not focused, if I don't think, oh, I must protect this object, the object gets placed somewhere never to be found again.
Yeah, particularly the trash. Um,
Yes.
so, Honey Boy, Isidore, could you now most of our viewers, and when I say most of our viewers, I mean our single viewer who is your mom.
My
Shout out
mom
to
loves
Tatiana
me.
Lemego, our
My
viewer.
mom loves me. She always comments after this telling me that I look cute and that you have a nice voice. Our one dedicated viewer enjoys us immensely.
Okay, so to our viewer, could you explain what Honey Boy is?
Even Stevens, but a fever dream filled with crack cocaine, and at one point hookers. But they're chickens, and it's an entire allegory.
That's pretty accurate. Also extremely confusing for someone who hasn't seen the movie, but pretty accurate. I like to
The
think of
movie
the
itself is confusing, I'd like to.
I like to think of the film in one word. It's a Shia LaBeouf biopic, or you could say a Shiopic. Yes, I coined it a Shiopic.
Witty, I think, maybe,
It is very
perhaps?
witty. I haven't heard anyone else on the internet come up with this. I also came up with the word Celtic Phoenix for like the sequel to the Celtic Tiger, which was later taken up by someone else. So pretty good.
Everyone be stealing your ideas, man. You need to
Everyone's
patent
stealing
that
my
stuff.
ideas.
Patent it, copyright, get that
Yeah, I
money.
need to get it. Yeah. Anyway, so Shia LaBeouf wrote a biopic about his life. So he sort of the character's name is everyone forgets the character's name. I literally need to look it up on Wikipedia. It's Otis Ludd, but
I
for the purpose of this, I'm just going to call him Shia LaBeouf because they
I
clearly just said that for
appreciate
legal
that you
reasons.
do research. I really one of us has to do it, and I really appreciate that you're just carrying that load on your shoulders, man.
They show they refer him to Otis in the movie, and they only say one time what his surname is. You can see it on the urine that he has in rehab. So there you go. That's what I knew.
Yeah, but he's really just Shia LaBeouf proxy.
He's basically just Shia LaBeouf, just for legal reasons. That's not his name. It's like when Dreamgirls came out and they're like, "We're not the Supremes, we're the Dreams. They're completely different."
You
Please don't
know,
sue us, Diana Ross.
Shia LaBeouf could have actually been in the biopic. I think that would have been cool. Like, he is an actor. Could have done it.
He
Would have
isn't
been
a
great in
biopic.
it. He's momentarily in the biopic.
No, but he plays the dad.
I know, but like, I think he would have been really cool as like being him, if that makes sense. I know it
Yeah,
seems really like
yeah.
I know that he's the dad, and I know that he's like in the biopic. Um, but just I don't know. It was kind of hard watching this guy Otis the whole time when I was like, okay, basically
You
I
needed
found
someone to go up to him and be like, just do it!
so
Do it!
by the way, Shia LaBeouf, like I personally thought him acting as the dad was like entirely Oscar worthy, but it's really disorienting seeing Shia LaBeouf being the father figure when I really want him to be the main character. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm. I know what you mean. Um, so during the Transformers movies and afterwards, Shia LaBeouf in real life went completely off the rails and was caught drink driving. And instead of being sent to prison because he's rich, went to rehab.
Fancy California rehab or
Yeah,
like
fancy
Florida
California
rehab.
rehab.
It's one of those.
It's like that. If I showed you the New York episode of The Simpsons, where they'll have a parody of like Robert Downey Jr. in the 90s, and it's like, I'm checking in, he's checking in, I'm checking in. No more booze or drugs or pills. Hey there, that's my aspirin. I'm checking in. And then
No,
Bart's like, I want to go to rehab when I'm older. And Marge's like, well, you better start saving now. It's very expensive.
well, so no, but I have definitely seen like ads for fancy rehab places in California. Like that is a legitimate thing that used to air on TV.
Yeah. So this place is super, super fancy, and he has a psychologist there who's helping him deal with his kind of emotional issues. And she basically says, if you do not play ball with me and do my psycho babble, you're going to prison. And he's like, okay, I will address you. And she's like, there's problems in your childhood. He's like, no, there wasn't. My childhood is perfect. Haven't you seen Even Stevens? It's 3 seasons of non-stop goodness. And also I was in Holes.
I mean, to be fair, the problem
And
is that I can still quote Holes to like this day.
yeah, but that's because you blame everything on your no good, dirty, rotten great great grandfather.
Dig it up. That was a really good song, man.
Here's something to dig it up.
There's a song. It's like Shia LaBeouf and like the other guys from Holes like rap like this digging song.
Really? Is this like with the Wild Wild West rap or the Men in Black rap?
I I couldn't tell you those, but I could tell you the Holes rap. I'll show it to you on YouTube afterwards.
Okay, very good. I'm not going to put in this video because I did that for Annie and tried to put in some music, and then Sony ended up taking down my video. So that's why Annie is not up on YouTube.
We're too small for Sony.
Yeah.
Come on. So I have this problem. There is a poem in Holes, like the book Holes, and I believe it's in the movie as well. That's like if only the woodpecker sighed, the bark on the tree was not so hard to eat. And I always think about that poem, and sometimes I'll like quote it and I'll be like, I am quoting a hashtag serious poem, like, you know, I'm so deep, I'm so poetically knowledgeable, and then I'll realize I've memorized a poem from Holes. Like that's it. That's my literary knowledge.
But then sometimes to repost, I say, if only the wolf should reply. It's like the final stanza of the poem. Boom. Okay, so we've talked more about holes than we have about Honey Boy.
All relevant.
But that is okay. That is all relevant. So, so to deal with his presence, Shia LaBeouf needs to explore his past. So it goes back to him being 12 years old and being the star of Even Stevens. And you're thinking, oh, he's like the star of a Disney Channel show. Surely this was all fun. Look what happened to Miley Cyrus. She ended up so well. Well, it turns out that instead of living in luxury in Hollywood Hills, he was living in a crappy little motel with his dad, who was verbally abusive and say physically abusive as well.
Physically abusive, definitely.
All sorts of abusive.
Emotionally, psychologically, socially.
Yeah. And the motel is not like it's not just that it's kind of run down and it's like there's like sex workers there, there's like drug use there. It's not a place you want to have a 12-year-old child.
Yeah, particularly like a child that I think my issue is like if they didn't have money and they were solely reliant on this kid and that's where they were living, the dad was trying his best, I would understand. But the dad just basically reneges on all aspects of being a father to this child. He doesn't
Mm,
pick him up on time, he lets him be alone. Like everyone on set basically pities him extensively.
mm.
So it's like you're putting this child in a dangerous location to live in, but you're not even trying to care for him, you know? Like the place is an afterthought, the same way that your child, other than the money he has, is an afterthought.
Yeah, exactly. So in kind of older Shia, it cuts between older Shia LaBeouf in Rehab, who's played by Lucas Hedges, who you might recognise from Manchester by the Sea, and then young Shia LaBeouf is played by Noah Jupe, who you might recognise from A Quiet Place, and A Quiet Place Part Two, which ironically was delayed by a real pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic. So I'm waiting for coronavirus to end so I can figure out what happens next. Because apparently Cillian Murphy's going to be in it. The last time Cillian Murphy was in a post-apocalypse movie.
Um, was it 27 days?
Yeah, 28 Days Later.
28 Days Later. How is it that I know that these movies exist, but I'm unable to ever list a movie name correctly? Like, I just can't do it.
No. You're on IMDb, you're like, I think it's 27 Dresses starring Katherine Heigl.
Yeah, no, this is a legitimate problem because you're always like, Isadora, you watch so many movies. You're like very knowledgeable of pop culture. And I'm like, yes, I am. Now watch me not be able to get a single movie or book name correct in this entire conversation.
Guess how long it took to shoot this movie?
10
I'll give you a
days.
clue. Okay, well, that's incredibly short now. I'll give you a clue. Something like
God damn it.
Transformers takes 6 months.
1 month.
So it took Rocky 1 month. This was shot in 19 days. Which was the same length of time it took to shoot Whiplash because they did it on a tiny budget, 3.5 million. And I was also reading about Whiplash. You know, Whiplash, he gets hit by a car, but then he's like, no, I still got to go to the big show and play my drums.
Yeah.
Apparently, the director Damien Chazelle was hit by a car, but still went to set the next day because he wanted to finish the film on time.
Fair play. Fair play.
Like, talk about life imitating art and like a character being obsessive about something to to the detriment of his own personal health. So it cuts between him in the present, him in the past. So him in the present isn't really engaging with the psychotherapy because he has PTSD from these unresolved issues from his past. And you see that his father used to be this rodeo clown and he used to do like stunts with chickens and stuff. And all the time you see this recurring symbolism of a chicken. Like no matter where he's in rehab, like a chicken will always appear. And the idea is that no matter how much he tries, he can't get away from the chicken. He can't get away from his past. And until he confronts his past, he's not going to be able to deal with his problems in the present.
I think it also references the father a lot because the father's entirely caught up in his present. Like all he wants to do, like this is son who, as far as you can tell, is a really excellent kid, genuinely trying to help his dad, like who actually wants to make his dad proud with the acting. And you see so many scenes of him really struggling to learn how to act and be competent and having all this pressure put on him. But then his dad comes to stage to see his kid, and all he does is tell like the cute staff, like the cute female staff, all these chicken stories.
Yeah, exactly. He just hits on the staff and like low-key abuses his son, and
he can't let go of his past. He can't let go of the chicken.
Yeah, because his father is like his minder or something on set. Like every young person needs to have a minder. But the father's a felon, so there'd be like very few other jobs that he could do. And there's a great scene later on in the film where the father's kind of feeling sorry for himself, and he always wanted to be an actor himself, and he feels a little bit kind of resentful, jealous of the son that the son made it and he didn't. So he says, like, do you know what it's like having to rely on my son for money, like having my son pay me? And then the son says this fucking cutting thing where it's like, you wouldn't be here if I didn't pay you.
No, but that's so true.
It's so true. And it's so real. And that's what I like about the film. It's real and it's not like people don't hug and, hold hands at the end. Like he reaches some resolution, but you still see it's like a really traumatic childhood. And there's the French philosopher Blaise Pascal said, tout comprendre, c'est tout pardonner, which means, how good is your French?
To understand is to pardon or to forgive.
Exactly. To forgive. But it didn't mean forgive as in you forgive the person for everything they've done. It means in French, literally to like no longer be angry and resentful. And you realize that like the reason your man is Shia LaBeouf has so many emotional problems is because he still feels all this anger and resentment. Like when he's a kid, and he tried to, talk to the dad wouldn't listen. When he tried to lash out at the dad and like shout at him, like the dad shouts back, like the dad would hit him. So like he ends up like crying and going away. So he never learns how to deal with someone difficult in his life, never learns how to deal with conflict. So when he goes through like stress and pressure as an adult, like being the star of this major Hollywood franchise, he can't handle it and he goes completely off the rails.
And
And
he
I just found
basically
it,
runs away, like he
yeah,
self-sabotages.
yeah, he self-sabotages, and I found it really powerful. Like for some reason, this film didn't get amazing reviews, when I think it was one of the best films last year. Like I very
I adored
rarely
it.
watch films twice, and I've seen this film twice. Like I think it's phenomenal.
It's
Um,
impossible to get you to watch film twice. As
yeah.
the person in this relationship who watches films multiple times, I have to drag you, physically like drag you to a theater begging and crying to get you to rewatch something because I
Yeah.
didn't see it.
And I suggested this film because I was with a bunch of people in Kerry, and like they were like, "Oh, what film should you watch?" And I suggested this one, and everyone said it was a really good choice. So there you go, 2 thumbs up, random people in Kerry. So, um, yeah. So like I just found it's really feels really real. It feels really powerful. Like the director, Alma Harrell, she's an Israeli American who's a background in music videos and in documentaries, and it really has that feel where like a lot of it is told on screen without dialogue, and it feels like you are watching people really interact. It has
It's
that
also very
documentary.
atmospheric. Like the coloring is very interesting. It is, now that you mentioned it, some scenes are like the kind of like over the top dramatic coloring that you might see in a music video, you know? Like when
Mm,
things are blue, it is such like a concentrated blue,
mm.
you know?
Yeah, they must have used like post processing for the colors to saturate it. They're like the anti Zack Snyder's.
But yeah, overall, like, I don't know. So I can be quite critical of movies unless they are very good rom-coms because your girl loves a good rom-com and I'm willing to forgive a lot for a good rom-com. But when it comes to like artsy movies, I'm like, let me put on my fancy little French art hat and be very hypercritical of this movie, everyone. But I loved Honey Boy. I actually thought that in many ways, I mean, sure, okay, I'm not gonna lie, it was like a little disorienting for me seeing Shia LaBeouf as a dad. Because I'm like, I know how old you are, Shia LaBeouf.
I thought it
I
was really
don't.
powerful though because it's like it's a meta narrative. It's like him by playing the dad, he's like understanding the dad, and he is by acting it out, he's like learning to forgive him. So I felt it like worked in a meta narrative sense as well as a narrative of the film.
Oh, totally. That was just having grown up and watched Shia LaBeouf on like Even Stevens throughout my childhood. You can totally understand why I was just like, it was a tad bit disorienting.
Yeah, that's fair
Yeah.
enough.
However, other than that, I actually thought the scenes were so powerful. Like I cried so much throughout that movie. Like,
Mm.
and I mean to be fair, I do cry at A Stiff Breeze, but I cried more than the usual amount.
Yeah, no, I was just really impressed by it. It's super powerful. I think it's the type of film that like someone said, oh, it's just like some $3.5 million therapy project or like that. I was like, that's like saying that E.T. is like a $3.5 million therapy project for Steven Spielberg because it deals with him like losing his dad when he was a teenager, like his parents getting divorced and dealing with the fallout of that. Or Catch Me If You Can is like the same thing. Like, yeah, people are going to like delve into their past and delve into things that traumatize them, and a lot of the time by making films, they'll help exercise their demons. But that's like super powerful. Like they're going through their own kind of emotional journey by both writing the script and by acting in it. And like we as an audience can learn so much from that. So I think it's really, really weak. Like I'd much rather have a film that feels really personal and really heartfelt rather than one where it's like, oh, we put there's a writer's strike coming up, so we wrote the script in 3 weeks. Transformers 2, Transformers 2. Hmm? What? No?
So look, I find that commentary about it really weak as well because like all the greatest, I mean, to be fair, there are definitely great works of literature that don't deal with trauma, but most of the great movies or great works of literature that I've read that resonate with me are about like personal trauma and are about authors dealing with their own personal trauma. Like I
Mm.
said, My House on Mango Street is my favorite book of all time, and that is entirely a book that's basically a meta narrative of an author dealing with with the issues of growing up in like a Latino neighborhood during the white flight and kind of dealing with the repercussions of coming from like a low socioeconomic status while being Latina in the United States, you know?
Mm.
I'm like, that book shook me. Like, I still own copies of that book because trauma is like fuels art.
Yeah.
Like, if we did not, and not to justify trauma, because trauma in many ways is a horrible thing,
Mm.
but some of the greatest pieces of art in the entire world have been created by people attempting to deal and understand their trauma. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I've always said like happy people don't make art, like well-adjusted people don't make art. It's the people who are a little bit broken inside and feel they have to heal themselves, make art because that's how they help process it and how they deal with it. And yes, it's more kind of obvious in this film than it is in others, but it's also far more powerful in this film than it is in others. You know, there was a director a few years ago, and after his mom died, like his elderly mom, his elderly dad came out of the closet and like started living openly as a gay man, and and he made a film about that called Beginners with Christopher Plummer and Ewan McGregor. So are you going to say for that film, oh, like he's just doing some therapy projects? Like no, like that made sense for him to make the film. It was really powerful. Like it's better than him making a film about you know like Ricky Gervais said that you should make art about what you know. So like you're not going to make some film that's set in the future in a prison where everyone is trapped in their own minds when you've something like that you can literally tap into.
Yeah, also, I think fundamentally, like, unfortunately, trauma is relatable.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Trauma doesn't only make art that can be made into something beautiful, like that trauma can be made into something beautiful and artistic that resonates with people, but it's also fundamentally relatable because a lot of like the human experience is going through traumatic things. Like you are going to go through difficult things in your life, and when you see that in cinema, it allows you to relate to it.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people who watch this movie, have been like hit by their parents or called names by their parents. Like probably not in as extreme a version as this, but like they certainly relate to it. And it really captures that kind of powerlessness of being a child at that age. Like you're, 12 years old and no one is really going to listen to you and everyone is going to value an adult's opinion above yours. And you don't have any like in medicine they say guilty confidence, but like you don't have any chance of going out your own. You always need to have someone to look after you. And in this case, it's either a parent like his father who's abusive, or a mom who's not there and not much better, or his mom signs up for the Big Brother program and he has like a very helpful Big Brother, but then his dad ends up like verbally and physically assaulting the guy. So like it shows how trapped and disempowered you are. And in the motel, he meets a sex worker who's in a similar situation. Like she feels disempowered, and she sees like a snake, like swimming on the water, and she says like, I'd say like we could walk on water too if we only believed it. Like the fact that they are so disempowered gave them their connection. Like they really felt for each other because they felt how little control they each had over their own lives.
Yeah, and I actually, when he meets her, I actually thought that was a really lovely scene because there's a scene in the movie where they've talked a bit and he starts like crying, and after they're hanging out, she gives him like this really big hug. And at least from what I saw, I imagined her to be quite young. Like
Hmm.
I'm quite certain we're supposed to assume that she is an underage sex worker.
I think she's certainly somewhere between like 15 and 19. She's pretty young.
Yeah, she was exceptionally young. And I don't know, like I just thought that was such a relatable scene because at the end of the day, it's like two broken children who can understand each other.
Yeah, and like he like is playing with her and stuff, and
And it
like
was so
she's like,
innocent.
yeah, it's very innocent, and she is like a kid at heart, but she's obviously surrounded by like older women who are kind of broken down by society and completely like drained by their work and like emotionally drained, and you see how she's kind of becoming that and how she's verbally abused as well by her female pimp. Um, like it's I just thought it was I felt like it was a really powerful film. I think everybody could watch this film and come back with like feel like it resonates with them. Um,
Oh, I just wanted to say, like, okay, not to go back to my favorite book of all time, House on Mango Street, but to go back to that book. So one of the themes of the book that I really adore is that it talks about the cycle of abuse and oppression and how
Mm,
in order to not be the future abuser, you have to actively want to break the cycle.
mm,
So I thought it was really, I mean, while I did find it disorienting, like I said, I do think that in terms of the symbolism of the movie, him being the father is actually really nice because it's like he is trying to make an effort to analyze the situation that he went through and not become that person. You know what I mean? Like you have to
yeah.
actively go through the process of thinking about what you've been through in order to not perpetuate future abuse on people, because it's a really big thing that children that were abused can grow up to become abusers if they aren't given like the proper like therapy and love and kindness to help try to adjust through the trauma, you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You see that his father talks about in his Alcoholics Anonymous meeting of like having extremely turbulent 20s and like not knowing that he had a kid, and you could see Shia LaBeouf would potentially go on that road as well if he didn't deal with his trauma. Um, and I feel that it deals with substance abuse really well. That people don't do drugs just because they're addicted or just because they're fun to do. They do drugs and they consume alcohol because they're trying to escape from pain, because they're trying to escape from their miserable lives. And Jordan Peterson talks about how if trauma like child abuse was completely contagious, and if it happened to you and you did it, then everybody would do it. Like a grandfather would do it to his father, father would do it to a son, and it would go on for generations. But we're not like that. Like, not everyone has grown up with that kind of abuse in their household. And the reason is that there are some people there to break the cycle. And by getting the help from people in rehab, and also when like getting help from the like a human kind of empathy from the sex worker who is in the motel with him, he's finally able to confront his father at the end of the film. And his father is like, oh, like, just show me in a good light, honey boy, like, make me look good. Um, and like like, he doesn't make him look good, but he shows him as human. Like, he doesn't show him as some horrible monster who preys on children, like in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Like, I think that's the most that could ask for. Like, we feel like he's a real person, and we feel his struggle as well as little Shia LaBeouf's.
I just also really appreciated how the movie discusses some of the problematic aspects of being a child star, because I mean, Californian and American, but fundamentally, like for the most part, a good portion of Disney Channel stars did
Mm.
not end up growing up with the most mentally healthy or satisfactory life in terms of their relationships or relationship with fame or like in
Mm.
terms of drug abuse and drug usage and stuff. And I think it's because unfortunately the Disney model does allow the kids to be taken advantage of by their guardians, you know? Like you have these kids working these incredibly long hours and and particularly if you get an actor whose family is dependent on their money,
Mm.
it can become extremely complicated because suddenly you're the person responsible for feeding your family, and that's an exceptionally difficult thing for a 12-year-old, you know?
Yeah, no, so it's a lot of responsibility, and
And 12-year-olds just honestly weren't made for that responsibility. Not that I don't think that child actors can be a really cool thing. Like I think it's fantastic to have like for children to be able to have the experience of being actors and like honing their skills and stuff, you know? But then when you get to a certain level of fame at an age so young and you suddenly have to be the adult, like that's not a responsible thing to allow a child to do.
mm. In the 80s, they'd have like magazines with like pictures of baby Drew Barrymore who'd been in ET and Firestarter and stuff, and they'd be like, how to make your child a child star. Like, do you think like nowadays we've lived through Macaulay Culkin, through Miley Cyrus, through like other kind of child stars who've gone off the rails, Justin Bieber, and a lot of the time got their lives back on track in later life. Do you think there's more of an awareness now of the dangers of being a child star than there would have been maybe 25 years ago when this movie is set?
I genuinely think so. And I'm not gonna lie, like a part of me, like, look, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really follow the lives of Miley Cyrus or Justin Bieber, but my sister, like, is more internet savvy than I. No, no, but I was talking to her about it, and like, as far as I can tell, they are both like currently in happy. Actually, no way, Miley Cyrus might have gone divorced. I don't know, man. My point is, they both are not currently doing exceptionally controversial things with their lives. They're making money. They seem to have stable lives overall. And that makes me genuinely happy for them. You know what I
But
mean?
they had really unstable periods. Like Justin
Yes.
Bieber was caught like I think he was like drag racing or drunk driving or something, and he got arrested. I think it was
Oh,
drag racing.
oh,
Um,
100% though. Like,
and not the
I,
good RuPaul kind of drag racing, the bad kind of drag racing.
no, but what I'm trying to say is like, I think it's really great to see people who probably had extremely complicated childhoods, like, be able to have like lives in which they can be happy afterwards. And sure, they did like a bunch of extremely like controversial, problematic things beforehand, but I don't think it's like bad to say that you're happy that someone came to grips with their mental health, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's the same thing with Shia LaBeouf. Like you could point to things where like Shia LaBeouf was, he did something inappropriate or did like he went off the rails. Like he had that time he went to a red carpet premiere with a bag over his head, saying like a brown paper bag, saying I'm no longer famous. Um, but I find that he has like overcome his trauma, and he's having this like Matthew McConaughey style career renaissance. Like not only was he Oscar worthy in this, he's Oscar worthy in the Peanut Butter Falcon, which is another breakout film last year. Like that film ended up doing great at the box office. This film was kind of forgotten about, but you can watch it on I think Amazon Prime now. Amazon financed it, so give your money to Jeff Bezos so he'll make more quality films like
More
this.
quality Shia LaBeouf films.
He needs
But
to be
look,
a trillionaire. He needs to be a male Lady True, a Lord True, if you will. Watchmen reference.
look, I guess what I'm trying to say at the end of the day is I was actually having a really good conversation about this because one of my friends, much like I, over the summer did a psychiatric rotation in which,
Mm-hmm.
but she also got the chance to work with some therapists.
Okay.
And we were talking about how, at the end of the day, like people's past trauma does not justify their actions. Like if you do something bad, even though you've had past trauma, that doesn't make it okay. But like being aware of someone's past trauma and knowing what they're going through can makes you more understanding of their situation, and it can be more helpful in helping to address it in the future. You know, like past trauma does not justify bad actions, but
Mm.
it allows you to know where the person's coming from and be able to relate to it and understand it.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I'd agree that going through trauma doesn't give you a blank check. Like, you can't say, oh, Adolf Hitler, everything he did was okay because his niece, who was also his girlfriend, committed suicide and he felt really sad after that. Like, obviously, that doesn't justify any of his actions. But by seeing people's trauma, you can have an understanding of how they got to the place they're in and have an understanding of where their actions come from. And I think that's what this film explores. Like,
not
it's,
not to justify Hitler in any way, because I think we can all agree Hitler horrible person.
yes,
You know,
so
Hitler
but
bad person. My family had to flee
yeah,
from Portugal
yeah,
to Brazil to escape that. But
yeah.
nonetheless, we can agree that trauma is something that like wait.
We're we're alienating a lot of our audience. So we're alienating the Walt Disney Corporation, Sony Pictures, neo Nazis, all of the big. We're not going to get
Yeah,
any
I know.
sponsorship
I
for
know.
this.
Our hatred of Hitler is gonna really affect our neo-Nazi fan base, obviously, which we totally don't have anyway because we have one fan and it's my wholesome Brazilian mother.
Oh, maybe we could review Green Room and see if we could get some of those sweet, sweet right wing, alt right, neo
Jesus
Nazi.
Christ,
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable now.
Have you seen Green Room?
No, I haven't.
It's really good.
We should watch
It's
it.
it's not like pro neo Nazi at all, but it does feature neo Nazis as villains.
I mean,
Um,
as someone who got kicked out of my previous, well, whose family got kicked out of their previous country, decades and decades ago by Nazis, I do love seeing a good Nazi villain to hate.
yeah.
That sparks joy.
Yeah, Patrick Stewart is the neo-Nazi leader.
Jesus Christ. That sounds
Yeah,
terrifying.
he's pretty good in it.
Okay,
Do you know
sorry.
Patrick Stewart was also played the poo emoji in the Emoji Movie.
Yeah, apparently he did that because his like grandchildren said that they really wanted to see him in the movie, and I'm like, sir, there comes a point where you do not indulge your grandchildren.
Do you know who previously turned down the same role?
Who?
Jordan Peele. He was like to his agent, "What roles do I have coming up?" And your man's like, "You've been offered the role of the shit emoji in the Emoji Movie." He's like, "You have to be fucking kidding me!" So he decided to make Get Out instead. So thank you, Emoji Movie, for giving us arguably the best horror movie of the decade.
That is ridiculous. Oh my gosh, that is not okay in any way, shape, or form. Like, I just, okay. I just, look, I know that Patrick Stewart has fuck you money. Do you know what I mean? Like, I get it. I get it. Like, he is a billionaire. Like, he can do whatever he wants with his brilliant, wonderful bald career. I love his baldness, though, to be fair. I adore his nice little shiny head. But at some point you have to think, do I really want my peak to be the poop emoji?
Well, thankfully, he's not going to be in the Emoji Movie 2, because they're not going to make an Emoji Movie 2, because their follow-up to the Emoji Movie was, no joke, Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse.
Exceptional movie. Sorry, we are slightly deviating from
We are
the
completely
topic.
deviating. The last 5 minutes have been nothing to do with Honey Boy. Okay, we're coming up to towards the end of the podcast. Let's wrap it up.
Perhaps
Final thoughts.
we can do some active editing later.
Yeah, final thoughts on Honey Boy.
I thought it was an exceptional look at trauma and the dangers of becoming a child star, but also discussing the cycle of abuse and how we can help to dismantle it through the power of psychotherapy. A good therapist solves everything, as my mother constantly tries to tell me.
And compassion from other humans who are like going through the same thing as you, if you can't get that, because not everyone can, because they make a big point of saying that like he is in a privileged position to be able to access to psychotherapy.
Oh yeah, like he's extremely wealthy, and I completely understand that. But well, then this could potentially into a whole discussion about how we need to make psychotherapy more accessible to populations. But hey, we don't have a 2-hour podcast for me to rant about the inequalities of psychiatry access, yo.
Exactly, we've got to keep it on time. So in summary, bop or scam?
Oh, is a bop.
Okay, and is a scam?
It is not a scam.
I'm joking,
sir.
it's a bop.
How dare you?
It is a bop.
Misusage of my phrase.
So it is a very good movie. Watch Honey Boy on Amazon Prime or whatever illegal means you have to watch films. It is excellent.
Although, please don't watch it if you're a neo-Nazi, because neo-Nazis are not welcome in my joy, because they, as my idol Marie Kondo states, do not spark joy.
And that's a wrap. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye!